Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast of Talk to Rami. I am so excited to introduce you to Brittany Butler, a former CIA targeting officer with 9 years in counterterrorism center with extensive experience both at Langley and in the Middle East. Brittany has been at the forefront of key intelligence operation, a passionate advocate for women's rights in Middle East. She is championed human rights campaigns for Afghan women and now aids Afghan refugees in her community. Brittany also, she is an author of this amazing novel, The Syndicate Spy, which blends fact and the fiction to spotlight the remarkable female intelligence officer who transcend cultural barriers to unite us, not separate us. Let's dive in. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Rami.
Thank you for being here. I was looking for this podcast for a long time to talk to you. But from the high school cheerleader, how did you end up being a targeting officer, CIA? How did you do that? What is your story?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, right? So I worked at the American Embassy in Paris my junior year of college, and I did an internship there, and I was involved in some passport fraud cases. I had
Wow.
some knowledge of Arabic naming conventions, and I was doing what we call name traces at the embassy there, people who wanted to come into the country. And this was this was like 2004, so pretty soon after 9/11. And we were doing name traces on some individuals that were trying to get into the country. And I discovered that there was a couple of guys that shouldn't be coming into the country with, terrorist links. And so I highlighted that to my bosses, and there were some embedded CIA officers there at the American Embassy, and they flagged it to their superiors. And they just suggested to me, have you ever thought about applying at the CIA? And it never
Wow.
occurred to me. I just thought, okay, like that was something of the movies, but I did. Yeah, I applied online, and the rest is history. They recruited me out of college. So I started there when I was like 22 years old. So I was like a baby, and
Oh my God.
yeah, I started doing all
Did,
this crazy stuff.
did you go to the farm?
I did. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that
It's
was,
required. Yeah. Every time you go overseas to any kind of war zone environment, it's kind of required training, or it was at that time. I
you
imagine
know,
it still is.
you were such a young lady at that time. How challenging was that to adapt to a new environment? Because for you, okay, I'm in high school, I'm coming to, wow, this is real. This is really real. I'm just doing something that I'm passionate, I'm great, and I love doing this. How did you adapt to? Because the retention rate in the farm is very low.
Yeah, I would say I think being naive a little bit kind of plays into it, because you just kind of go for it. I didn't have anything holding me back. I was young. I extremely patriotic. I, was devastated like so many Americans after what happened on 9/11. And I wanted to do something to help, protect us from that happening again. And so I was like, sign me up, ready to go. And I really listened to my instructors at the farm. I think maybe a lot of times both men and women come in there thinking they know everything, or
Yeah.
they can, like with learning firearms, for example. I think it actually worked to my advantage that I didn't have any experience with firearms, because I came in there kind of with a blank slate, and I really listened to my instructors about how to shoot, how to line my sights, all these different things. And there was maybe some individuals there that, had hunted before with their dad growing up and thought, I know everything there is to know about guns. And I think that was sometimes a disadvantage for them, because they came into it thinking that they knew more than the instructors. And I was kind of really in receive mode. I was like, I just want to know everything you have to teach me. I think humility goes a long way, and just in terms of being receptive to what other people have learned, after decades of doing the work. What can I learn from you? What I'm here to soak everything in. And so I think that really went a long way for me, at
Yeah.
training at the farm.
You have three characters in the book. I read there's Juliet and Mariam and Graham, and very close relationship, especially between Juliet and Mariam. Which is this princess of the Saudi family and all that stuff. You guys are working in the, this all the plots and everything else. How do you bring that to the reality? I know you use different plot and everything else in the real field. Was it like that? Working with the locals, working the authorities, working with the your counterparts in Middle East, because that's the culture of things too.
Yeah, I think to a large extent, what maybe the Middle Eastern services are missing is a female presence. So I didn't work a lot with females in intelligence. It was not until after I left the intelligence community that I started to work with Afghan women. And because I was really exposed to what was happening to them under the
Wow.
Taliban's rule. And so I really wanted to do something once I got out of that line of work, the intelligence work, to help promote their rights in the Middle East. And so I worked a lot with them after I left the CIA. But while I was in the CIA, I worked really closely with Arab intelligence services. And so that partnership I found was really essential to our counterterrorism mission. We could not have done it without those partnerships. We're really closely aligned with a lot of Arab intelligence services. And it really, I think it's essential to any kind of like counterterrorism mission to align yourself with the people of that culture that really understand things. I would be in operational meetings and they would pick up on things that I might not be as sensitive to or understand. And that was really, and sometimes that was really pivotal to the relationship going well or not going well, was working alongside people from that culture, from that religion, who understand things, from a different perspective than an American woman or
Have you ever handled any assets, like, as far as a handler, or because that relationship must be very interesting, because
Yes.
as you said, it's a cultural and this, and you
Yeah.
get close to them, you start caring about them, and
Yeah.
basically sometimes you can't leave them behind, because even though they are assets, they're helping you and everything else. How did you handle that relationship?
Yeah, I think, and I think you touched on it whenever you introduced me. I think it's kind of about, for me, finding common ground. I mean, we're all humans, right? We all have the same basic desires to see our children be safe, go to school, have a better life than what was given to us. And I think if you find a way to relate to other people on, that common ground of, okay, we all kind of want the same thing. We want peace, we want stability,
Yep.
we want economic opportunity for everyone. If you're aligned on those on those goals, then you can get past any kind of cultural or religious divide, I think. And so I tried to, whenever I was speaking to a source or trying to build rapport with the source, I tried to just kind of develop a relationship with them based on those common things that unite all of us, is that we all want peace and stability, and we want our families to be safe. And how can we work together to achieve that mission? And I tried not to focus on what set us apart from each other. And so that seemed to go a long way, just in terms of and again, not acting superior in any way. I think that goes a long way as well. Like, yes, we're so lucky to live in this country. We're given so much
Wow.
opportunity, and not everyone is given that opportunity. And
Yep.
so I feel like with that comes a certain responsibility to like uphold certain morals and ethics, to make sure that we're working with people and we're upholding our end of the bargain. I feel like it was really upsetting for a lot of us who worked in intelligence or in the military in Afghanistan to kind of leave Afghanistan the way we did and not be able to honor some of the relationships. I mean, we would not have been able to defeat Al Qaeda if it wasn't for the integrity and the courage of the Afghan people who helped us to do that. So that's why I'm so involved in helping Afghan refugees here in my local community to resettle and reestablish their lives, because a lot of them are under threat of the Taliban if they were to stay in Afghanistan.
And it's getting worse right now since the Taliban that actually took over everything. I hear very horrible stories right now. And then your community, how big is your current Afghan community that you are helping them? Is it pretty big?
Yeah, I would say I help like 4 or 5 families right now, and
Wow.
they're settling in really well. I mean, I think the main thing is just connecting these community, like connecting people who have come from Afghanistan and making sure that they have community. I think it can be very hard, obviously to adjust to life here because it's so different from Afghanistan, just in terms of how they socialize. So like the men and women don't intermingle. And so we've set up these dinners for the women to get together on Friday nights, and they, come together and have, food and stuff. And that seems to really go a long way in terms of making them feel like more at home here, because it can seem so foreign to them. A lot of our customs and, kind of just the everyday life. So I've been really fortunate to be a part of that mission. But then I really love the work I'm doing with this organization called the IBU movement. We help to spread the word about clothing that women in
Wow.
Kandahar are making. They're not allowed to do really anything under the Taliban right now. They're not allowed to get educated. They're not allowed to go to work. And so one of the only things that they can do is sew clothing. And the Taliban has allowed them to sew garments. And I have been really blessed to be able to partner with them to showcase these beautiful dresses that they've been making for me on all my book events. And so I'm able to help spread the word about, okay, there's this, really wonderful movement going on that these women are able to work. They're able to help, provide for their family. They're able to, bring money into the house. And that can feel really empowering in a time when they feel like all the power has been stripped away from them. So, yeah, I'm fortunate to
One
be
of
part of
the
that.
question I want to touch on that is the identity. When you join that kind of line of work and everything else, I don't know how Matt is thinking, but it's it's like you see what do you do for a living, Brittany? And when you come out of it, how did you really? It's hard for me that because I'm not saying you would lie, but you
Yeah,
can't really discuss what you do because for the
right.
national security, for this, the cases. But that's kind of is an art to handle yourself and then
Mhm.
like a public and just not, I don't want to lie, but I don't want to explain. How did you really do that? Because, especially when you're married and everything else,
Yeah.
how, a lot of people have that question. Actually, I asked a couple of people I'm interviewing, you said, can you ask her that? I said, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So I really, whenever think about it, when you come home to talk to your spouse, it's really not about like I worked on this computer program and I made these adjustments. It's more about the personalities, right? Like you're talking about, man, my boss was such a jerk today, and so stole my credit for this thing. And so it was more like I could still talk about things, but I wasn't providing like specifics about what I was doing. Now, it was really hard a couple times because there were some bad guys that we would get and would be in the news, and it's really, really hard because you want to be like, I helped with that, like, and but you just can't. And it's just part of the, and he knows that. And I think that a lot of people, that if you're married to somebody that's in the intelligence community, that just like certain things they can't discuss. And so he just has never pushed me to discuss anything. So it really has never been an issue for us. And I'll tell one story that I think is really funny. When he first found out that I was working in the intelligence community, we did this thing, and it sounds really morbid now, but it's just kind of the environment that was going on at that time. We did this thing called the 12 Raids of Christmas, and we all had to celebrate a certain, like, the capture or kill of a terrorist by making a baked good or something and bringing it to represent that operation into Langley for this 12 Raids of Christmas party. And I had a cake made. There was this guy I was going after that he was on Interpol's Most Wanted. His picture was everywhere. And I had a cake made up of him at Harris Teeter. I had this unclassified photo, and I just had them screen his face onto the cake. And my boyfriend, now husband, was over at my house, and he opened the refrigerator and saw this cake of this Arab dude in my refrigerator and was like, "What is this?" And so that was an interesting conversation. I was like, "Don't
Oh,
worry about it. Like, not a big deal, you know." So, yeah, and I think whenever I would go to the war zones, that would be really hard on him because it just wasn't something he grew up with. Actually wasn't something I grew up with either. I didn't have a, mother or father that was in the armed forces. And so like I would just say, okay, I'm going to the Middle East. I can't say where exactly. And he would drop me off. And at this time we were like flying in and out of Dulles Airport, and we had an unmarked plane, and it was all very spooky, and he would be like driving me out to this unmarked plane, and we'd be hugging goodbye, and it could be forever. And he was like, this is just not normal. Like, I know this is normal for you, but this is not normal, like that you just like go off to Iraq like
but he
for a
still
couple days.
married you.
But yeah, he was like, yeah, he fell in love. So
How,
and
how
it's
about how about the community, like people, like friends, neighbors, or
yeah.
people that were asking, "Hey, Brian, how's it working? What you do? How did
Yeah,
you?"
just boring. Just want to be as boring as possible. And I can put on the like, I'm just a blonde cheerleader idiot kind of a deal. Like I can put that on if I want to. So yeah, I would just, be like, oh, I'm in consulting for the government. And I feel like to a large extent, that's how people describe what they do in DC, especially like I'm a consultant for the government. And people are just, they don't usually question beyond that. And if they do start to really push you for information, something could be up. Like maybe they're working for a foreign intelligence service and they're trying to get something out of me. But otherwise, to a large extent, it was just like, I just try to sound as boring as possible.
How much cultural training did you have, or did you learn it on field, like in field training, like
Yeah.
with the people interacting, like a language like this? As I
Yeah.
told you earlier, I'm a Middle Eastern. It's our
Yeah.
culture is a little bit different, like Afghan culture, Persian
Right.
culture.
Right.
That's so important, I think, for intelligence community to understand that how to adapt this, as we spoke earlier, or how
Right.
to learn things, because
Yeah.
eventually it's going to help them to achieve their
Right.
goal, their purposes.
Right. And I think that's where working with the foreign intelligence services came in. So it was so important to do that because there wasn't any cultural training that I did at the CIA,
Wow.
like none whatsoever. And so it was it was learning on the fly. It was learning and I was, like I said, I was really young when I got into this line of work. So I think they operated under the understanding and the belief that you throw them in and it's sink or swim. And
Wow.
so it was like, okay. At this time, this is like, gosh, when I first got involved in Iraq, it was like 2006, 2007. And it was still like really, there was a lot happening and we really needed people. And there was this huge movement. Like we got to get intelligence officers out there. We've got to really figure out what's going on the ground. And so there wasn't a lot of time for training. And even like my Glock training, like when I went to go get trained on weapons, I had to get approval from my boss to be able to like leave for a week to go do that and then come back to work because with the work we were doing was so vital at that time.
Yeah,
So yeah,
but
training was like a privilege to be trained. It was like you have to
but
take time off of your regular job to go get trained.
I'm sure you have seen so many spy movies. You have seen so
Mhm.
many series. Like I'm watching Lioness,
Yes.
which is that's kind of, and it's a lot of them, a lot of them out there that they kind of portray the work of the intelligence community, everything else. But I don't think so. That's kind of even close to truth of how you operate, because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it's a teamwork. You have a geo guy, you got an analyst, you got a human
Mhm.
analyst, you got all. Not, it's just another hero game. Is that right? Is it that true to the fact?
Yes, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's definitely not a one man or one woman show like the movies would have you believe. It's a lot of committed individuals with they all have their specialities. Like we were saying, like the geospatial guy, you have the SIGINT guy, you have an imagery analyst, you have all these people working together to complete a picture. Now like people in charge, right? So there's people leading the operation, but you have to have the help of all these different committed individuals to come together to create an entire intel picture. In the case of Lioness, I had a hard time with that show. Now I've just watched the first episode. I haven't had time to watch more than that, but I had a hard time with it initially because it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like she bumps into a woman in a jewelry store and all of a sudden
Their
they're
friend.
friends, and she invites her to go do makeup with her. So, like I that didn't seem very believable to me. And that's not the way it really works.
Yeah,
So
especially with the amount of the security detail the lady had, and
yeah,
just gonna invite somebody to their safe zone, as
yeah,
just rather than just wenting them and just go through the background and everything. Who's this chick is coming here? Yeah, that
right.
was kind of weird to me too. That usually they don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And she has a conversation with I guess when she starts to recruit the army intel person to be like one of her spies, which again, that's not the way it works. We recruit foreigners that are already embedded in that terrorist network, that foreign government, whatever, to collect information for us. It's not, I don't send a special forces guy into Kandahar and hey, penetrate to the Taliban senior leadership. Like just like doesn't happen and it would
Yeah.
never work. Right. For what we were talking about before, with all the cultural differences, like they can spot a foreigner like a mile away. So there's no secret penetration going on there. So that was, so whenever they're having this asset, case officer discussion in the movie, Joe, I guess, is like
Yeah.
the handler. She is like very harsh with her asset and is like, we're not going to have a personal relationship. We're not going to talk about, anything other than the job. And it just doesn't happen like that. Like it doesn't, if it's like if you walk into a work meeting, right? And whoever you're meeting with and you're trying to sell software to is like, so hey, how's the family? How's everything going? And the person would respond, I'm not going to go there with you. I'm not going to talk to you about my personal life. Like the relation, it wouldn't go very well, right? You wouldn't sell the software because people connect at the human level. And it's the same way with running
Yep.
sources. You have to connect with them. You have to be nice.
I
Or
think
they're
as
not
you
going to
said,
want to do stuff for you.
yeah, it's a relationship base. Like
Yeah.
you connect with people, you educate yourself, and then
Yeah.
you learn from them, and then you kind of help each other.
Right.
I think that's the great, things that you just said. That is not really like what we see, because most of your work or anybody intelligence company is based on the relationship with other people.
Yeah. And they're trusting you with their lives, right? So if that, to build that trust, there has to be an exchange of information. There has to be, that human relationship has to build. It can't be like it was portrayed in Lioness. And so, I think those shows are really entertaining. And I think if you could watch them from like a purely entertaining perspective, like this is just
Yeah.
fun to watch, I think that's great. And, that's what it's intended to be. But if you're looking at it like, I want to know what it's really like,
Like,
that's not.
one of the things that I listened to your Instagram, that was so funny, but I appreciate you posted that. You said, in the intelligence community, you don't sleep with your asset. You don't
Yeah.
sleep with the things to extract
No.
information. And you see this everywhere.
Oh my gosh, it's in every single movie. It drives me absolutely crazy, which is why I wrote this book. I
Yeah.
wrote this book to change the narrative about female spies. Like, we're more than just these like sexual dominatrixes, and our only use is to sell our bodies for information. Like, this is not the way it works. And actually, if you were caught doing this at the CIA, you would be fired immediately. Like, there would be no discussion. It would just be,
Oh my God.
you're out. Yeah.
And Russian do that.
The Russians do that. So they do warn us whenever we, whenever one of our first security briefings is like all about, okay, if you're like at a bar and some like tall, beautiful Russian woman walks up to you, or a beautiful Russian man, and like, you're not used to getting attention like that, it's not because you're automatically attractive in Moscow. Like it's because they're trying to recruit you, you know, like, and so yeah, they still very much use the honeypot method from what I understand, which is, you know, obviously like using sex to, you know, kind of lure a source, but that's not how it works with CIA. And
Yeah.
I think we do a disservice to the women working in that line of work because we have so much to overcome as females operating in a very male dominated world. You know, not only the male dominated vaults of Langley itself, but then also, you know, in places like Afghanistan, you know, where these really fanatical Islamists are don't see us as their equal. And we have some serious hurdles to overcome there. And so we don't need Hollywood portraying us as these like vapid sexual dominatrixes. It just does us a disservice. When we use the same tradecraft, we have the same intellect as our male counterparts, and we can do
I
the
am
job.
so happy that you're speaking so loudly about, that female power because,
Yeah.
as I told you earlier, I think the females are the same power. They have the same power as a man they can do fabulous job. And
Yeah.
believe it or not, in some cases they're much smarter
Yeah.
because, they trust their guts. Every time I want to
Hmm.
do something, I
Hmm.
ask my wife, she said, what do you think? Because I
Yeah.
trust her guts more than my gut. And
Yeah.
she said, I think we should do that. But,
Yeah.
I know your time is valuable and you have a lot to do.
Yeah.
But did you have a hard time to go to the, PRB process of Langley to get your book published? Because
No, I didn't. And
really,
I've heard from my counter, like, so I have several friends that have published nonfiction books and they have a really hard time. I think because they're trying to talk about what it was like for them at the CIA. It's kind of like their story. But this is a fictional world. This is fiction based on fact, right? So you're going to be ingrained in the story, in the life of what it's like to be an intelligence officer, but I'm going to do it in such a way where I'm not giving up any classified information. And so I think for that reason, it went through the PRB really smoothly because I didn't reveal anything. It's totally fictional. But again, it's rooted in my experience.
and
So
then when you said just submitting your next book for editing, when that's gonna come out?
yeah, so to be determined. I don't know the exact date yet, but
You love
hopefully
writing.
I love it. I love it so much. It's all I want to do. I think I've talked to other writers and you're really a writer from what they've told me when you feel like your real life is a distraction from your fictional world that you've built. So it's like it sounds very strange, but I definitely have found my passion with writing and I'm really excited because I have some interest from some really awesome people that want to see the books made into TV show. And so I have a little bit more pressure on me to like get the second book done so that we can sell it as, a television show. So
I'm so happy that you mentioned that. I'd love to see this
yeah,
TV series and TV show.
yeah.
And the last question, what character, what person would you pick to play your role as a Juliet in the TV series and the female actresses?
Oh my gosh. So I don't know if you've seen is it 1923 or is it no, it's 1880.
1883, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Isabel
The
May,
the
the
British sassy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not the British. No, 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 not the British one. She's got long blonde hair, and I think her name is Isabel May. She's pretty. She is the narrator for the very first prequel to
Oh.
Yellowstone,
Oh,
and
okay.
she's relatively like unknown, which I really like. I would love to just like I don't know. I'd love to have someone like her that's really a
I have a
student.
feeling it's gonna happen. I have a feeling that,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a feeling, trust me, that your novel is gonna be TV series. I
Oh,
promise you. I don't know. I have that feeling. And I
thank
would
you.
love to because I read it and it's nice and
Thank
it's got a lot of potential to be there. But Brittany, I know you're busy. Thank you so much. Thank you for
thank
being here. I had so much
you.
fun. Hopefully next time for the next
Yes.
book. But I told everybody should go and actually get the book and read it. It's fun reading. It's a
Yeah.
very fun reading. And
Good.
once again, thank you, Brittany.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have a wonderful